Do you like pouring money down the drain? I mean, imagine for a moment working so hard, putting your energy, your attention, your focus, right? Investing money into growing your consulting business only to pour money down the drain. Well, in fact, that's what many consultants are doing. And usually it's not intentional. But what I want to do here is break down why this happens so that you can make sure that you're not doing the same thing that so many others are doing. And what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about follow-up. And I've been running consulting businesses for over 2 decades. I've had the pleasure of working with thousands of consultants over the last 16, 17 years through consultingsuccess.com. And follow-up is one of these areas that almost consistently we see. It doesn't matter whether you are new to consulting or, like so many of our clients, you've been consulting for many years, in some cases well over a decade. And it doesn't matter whether you're running, a solid 6-figure or 7 or multi-7-figure business. Follow-up is one of these areas that a lot of people just take their eye off of. And over time, the negative impact can actually be quite considerable. So let's just start off and look at the data here together. 80% of sales requires at least 5 follow-ups after your initial touch point with a buyer. Yet 44% of people give up after just 1 outreach or 1 follow-up. Think about that for a moment, right? The data clearly shows, and you've probably heard statistics like this before that support the number of touch points that you need to have, whether it's 5, whether it's 7, right? That might change over time and depending on the source. But what we can all agree on is the importance and how critical it is to follow up. Yet what so many people don't do is they don't follow up, or they don't do it consistently, right? They maybe send 1 message, whether it's on LinkedIn or email, they don't hear back and they go, okay, I guess what I'm saying isn't working. Or they maybe do send 1 follow-up, but they don't get the response that they're looking for, or they don't get any response at all. And they think, okay, this person clearly is not the right person for me. What I'm doing, again, is not working, right? And they stop. And other times people just forget. They know they need to follow up. They know the value of it. They know they need to be doing the 5, 6, 7, or significantly more number of follow-ups over a period of time with an ideal client, but they don't do it because they're busy, because they forget, they have other things going on. Well, let's talk about how you can fix this and share with you here some best practices so that you can ensure that you have a real game plan, that you have a system, you have a process that you can run inside of your consulting business so that you don't succumb to the situation that some people find themselves in, where you're essentially sitting on a gold mine of business, right? Potential business through your contacts, through your database, through the people that you have made some form of contact or had an interaction with, but you don't continue it. And that is the gold mine, right? That you want to tap into. People have this belief that they have to always go out and get new business. What they tend to forget is that the best business is the business that you already have, the people you already have a relationship with. So you want to make sure that you have a great system in place for your follow-up. Otherwise, doing all of this outreach and trying to get in front of new people is not going to have the kind of impact that you want, because it's almost like you have holes in a bucket and you keep putting more water in, but you keep losing the water because you have holes in the bucket. So let's fill those gaps, right? Let's close those holes. Let's make sure that you have the right structure and the right system that's strategic, and then you'll be in a much better position to go out and look for new business. All right. So what's really important here is speed. Speed is your advantage. People are looking for information. People that you want to work with are actively looking for people that can help them to solve the problems that they have or to achieve the goals that they desire. And there's more access to information and more ways to get that information than ever before. What you can see consistently, and I've had this experience so many times, even in my personal life, where I will think, hey, I need to find a landscaper for our house to look at the garden, or I need to find a company to maintain the furnace. And these are just random examples, although the landscaping one is actually a quite recent one. And what happens is I'll make some phone calls, right? Or I'll send some messages online, and there will be people who will not return calls for, in some cases, many days, if at all. And there will be others who respond right away. Now, who do you think has the better chance of winning that business? Well, what happens here in this case is, let's just use the landscaping company. The one that answers the phone right away and books a visit to come to my house to, look at the property, they have a much higher likelihood of winning that business than somebody that takes 2 or 3 days to respond, right? Because I've likely already made my decision, or I already feel that the first company that I've had that interaction with, that was so quick and so professional, right, that they are likely a better company to work with. Because if they are so slow to respond and so slow to communicate, what does that say for how they do everything else, right? So this is really important, that you make sure that your system inside of your business, that there is, especially if you have a team, that there's an understanding, there are guidelines, there are quote unquote rules of how to communicate, how to respond to people, right? So the moment somebody fills in a form on your website or that you get an email, you want to get a response out within, hours. If not, you can't necessarily do it right away, but you want to do it definitely the same day. And ideally, you want to do it within a few hours of receiving it. That's a great way for you to actually start picking up opportunities that otherwise might disappear. Because if you wait, what will happen is that person that sent you an email, right, to inquire may have also sent an email to 3 or 4 other people. And if 1 or 2 of those other people already responded before you did, they've likely already decided, okay, I already have 2 meetings with these people. I don't need these 2 other ones. And that might have been you. So if you're faster to respond, or your company's faster to respond, it gives you an advantage and it helps you to be in a position where you will be able to move that conversation forward. I hope that makes sense. All right, let's talk about another one here. And that is to make sure that you are leveraging a CRM. The best follow-up systems use automation for consistency, not for content. A lot of people make this mistake. They think that automation is something they should be doing a lot with their content. And so what they end up doing is sending, hundreds or thousands of messages, whether it's on LinkedIn or by email, to people that are very clearly automated, right? There's no human element in there. There's no personalization. And then people wonder why they're not getting good response rates. Well, it's because you're not treating the people that you're reaching out to like human beings. You're treating them like transactions and numbers, and they can see that, they can sense it, they can feel it. That, again, makes you a commodity because you're doing the same as everyone else. But where you can, and I would suggest should, use automation very wisely and strategically inside of your business is with your CRM, right? Most CRMs, very simply, you can set up some rules or triggers that, for example, notify you when you have not gone in and updated the profile or notes, or there's essentially no activity on a contact's profile. So imagine that you have 100 people in your CRM that are ideal clients, and over a period of time, you haven't made a note in the profile of 25 of them. There's no phone call, right? No email, no LinkedIn message, no communication. Well, you can set this up so that, for example, once a month or every 6 weeks or whatever frequency you decide, to be reminded that, hey, you haven't been in touch with this person. Oh, okay, I guess I better check in. And we'll talk about in just a couple of minutes here what you can do that would be valuable for those people and how to actually do follow up consistently in a way that doesn't feel promotional or salesy, but in a way that you can actually feel good about, and in a way that the person you're reaching out to appreciates. But setting those triggers is really important. Now, if we go to the data supports this. Companies that use CRM systems see an almost 30% increase in sales and a 34% improvement in sales productivity. But what I'd say is even more important is that when you are using a CRM and you set up some of these rules or triggers inside of it to notify you of when to reach out to people or what potentially to follow up with, right? Basic use of CRM, and you're actually tracking it, or you're going and you're looking at who's in your pipeline. You have different columns of your pipeline set up strategically, right? That all has to be mapped out and should be done the right way. But when you have that, one of the most important things is that you will never lose a qualified lead in your inbox. Again, there are so many people who don't use CRMs and they get busy, right? It's not that they're unintelligent people, right? They just get busy with life or with business or with client projects, so on and so forth. And they forget to follow up with somebody. They forget to reach out to somebody. You've likely been in that situation. I know I certainly have. Well, by having a CRM, it helps you to minimize or ideally even eliminate that from happening. So you never forget to follow up with somebody. You might think in this, like today, oh, I need to follow up with this person, but you don't do anything with it. And then if you haven't written it down, if it's not logged somewhere, you're likely going to forget about it, right? Because the day just goes on. Well, if you're using a CRM and you make that the home base for how you operate and how you think about business development and growing your pipeline and growing your consulting business, you're going to be much more organized. The number of things that will fall through the cracks will really be minimal, and therefore your business will be able to build. Now, think about this just for a moment. You don't need hundreds or thousands of people in your CRM right away. You'll get to that point over time. But even if you're adding a few new people, right, every week, let's just say you're adding 10 new people to your CRM every week. That's 40 people per month, right? That's what, 480 over a year. But that big number doesn't matter. Let's just take for a moment the small numbers of 10 per week. Well, 10 per week, what does that look like? So again, it's 40 per month, but what you want to remember is that the most people that you reach out to or follow up with will not be ready to engage and say yes to you right now. But if you keep doing this and you're reaching out and you're following up with more and more people over time, even if your response rate is very minimal, let's just say you get a 2 or 3% response rate, which would be pretty small, right? I would imagine that you're going to aim for much higher, right? 10%, 15%, 20%. This is definitely doable when you're talking about reaching out to people that you have a relationship with. So I'm not talking about cold, outreach and cold email and spam and no, none of that. I'm talking about people that you're actually engaging with in a meaningful way. Well, let's just imagine for a moment that you're getting a 10% response rate through your follow-up. So out of every 10 people, one person is responding. Well, if you have 10 people this week, you get one response, right? Not great, but by the end of the first month, right, if you have 40 people and you're getting a 10% response rate, now you have 4 people responding to you. Well, the next month, right, you have 8 people responding to you. You can see how these numbers start to compound. And I'm not saying that you're going to get 8 people responding or 10% responding to you every single week, right, every single month. But even if the number is not very high, as your CRM grows and you're managing it well, even with a small response rate, you can see how the business will be able to grow because you'll be able to have more conversations with more people, which will be able to lead to more business. Now, it's not just about frequency. It's about value. The best and most successful people in the professional services world, right, consultants, founders like yourselves, they understand that you need to show up and deliver value. That's really what sets you apart from others in the marketplace, right? It's how valuable are you to your ideal clients? Of course, they need to know about you. They need to understand what your expertise is, what problems you solve, right? What solutions you can deliver. But the reason that they would be excited, right, or even open to you reaching out to them and following up over and over again is because you're delivering value to them. And what does that look like? Well, it looks like you thinking about what are the insights that you can share with those ideal clients over a period of time. It's you thinking about who do you know that you might be able to connect them with. It's sharing, right, articles, content, research, data, right? You being a source of intelligence and of insights, helping those buyers to see around corners before they get there, helping them to think through the future, providing them with anything that in their minds can be valuable. Now, what that means is if you just show up and say, hey, do you want to have a call? Hey, I didn't hear back from you. Hey, we have this product. That's sales, right? That's promotion. That's, I should say, being salesy, right? Being promotional, and nobody wants that. If you continue doing that or even start with that, you're likely just to get marked as spam or somebody's going to remove you from your list or, right? You don't want that. So the way to show up and actually have people be willing to continue opening your emails or checking your LinkedIn messages or responding to you is that you show up and you deliver value, which means that you need to actually take time to think about what do your ideal clients truly value? Because if you're doing the same thing as everybody else, that's not valuable. That's commodity, right? That's you being average. You need to rise above what everybody else is doing. So look around and think about what are people doing right now and really think about what do your ideal clients care about? What do they want help with? We help our clients inside of the Clarity Coaching Program to get really clear on this, show them how to do research, how to use AI to do research, to figure out and answer these questions so that you can deliver insights to your ideal clients that are eye-opening, that provide significant value. And while you're doing them, they can clearly see that you are the expert in that area. And so if they have a problem or want expertise or advice related to that, they're going to come to you rather than trying to find somebody else. Next, let's talk about tracking patterns. It's really important that you pay attention to and identify what's working and what isn't working. For example, when you send a certain type of message through LinkedIn or through email, what kind of response rate do you get? Right? Are people responding to one message more than something else? Is there an email that you've sent that got a lot of people to respond? And are there other emails that you've sent that nobody is really responding to? You need to have tracking, because if you don't, it's almost kind of like flying blind, right? It's saying, here's my destination of where I want to go to, but you're not actually clear on where that destination exactly is. And so you just end up throwing a whole bunch of stuff, right? Hoping that it's going to hit the bullseye. But if you haven't really identified what that bullseye looks like, or you're not clear on, okay, I threw this one dart, let's say, and it was a little bit left, right? It was 5 inches left of the bullseye. If you don't know that, how can you calibrate to move it 5 inches to the right so it hits the bullseye? Well, it's the same with your marketing. If you're not tracking what is working and what isn't working, you're not being as efficient and effective as you can be. And it's almost always going to take you much longer to get the actual result that you want. So start tracking. What are people opening? What are they clicking on? What are they responding to? What are people engaging with in terms of content on your LinkedIn posts or anything else? When you give a talk, right? Do more people ask questions? Do more people come up to you at the event? Start really thinking and being very intentional about identifying what's working and what isn't working. And the name of the game is to do more of what is working and do less of what isn't working. Let me share with you one more thing here before we wrap this up. It's critical that you re-engage, meaning that, as I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of people that you reach out to, right? I mean, most data shows it's going to be over 90% of the people that you reach out to, they're not ready to buy or not thinking to buy exactly what you're offering that moment that you reach out to them. So that's why follow-up is so key, because today they may not be ready. Next week, they may not be ready. Next month, they may not be ready, but in 6 months from now, they very well will be, right? And so it's critical that you continue that follow-up. What that also means, and also why it's so important that you have something like a CRM in place, is because you might have a sequence or a process that you use when you are engaging with new people, right? Different messages you're sending, because that's the whole point, right? Is to have different templates and things that you don't have to always start from scratch, right? What insights can you share? Over time, you're going to pull more of what's working, remove what isn't working. And so you're going to have almost a sequence, which doesn't mean it's automated. It may be, but it's very carefully architected and crafted so that you're delivering valuable insights to people. But let's imagine for a moment that maybe goes on for 6 months, and after 6 months it stops. Well, now still need to make sure that you're re-engaging with people. It's important that you have triggers in your CRM, and if you don't, right, you should kind of restart this process. But think about who have you not had a conversation with or any touch point with for the last 8 months, 12 months, 18 months, and re-engage those people. Check in, find out how are they doing, what's new in their world, let them know what you're doing. Right? Share something of value, because even though they weren't ready for, let's say, a 6 or 8 month period, maybe now it's month 10 and they are. That's the power of follow-up, is that if you consistently follow up with people over time, you're going to be getting in front of more people. And the more they know you, they like you, they trust you when the time is right. And as long as you are consistently getting in front of them, that's where more and more people will raise their hands, which leads to more conversations, which leads to more business. If you want help with developing a follow-up strategy that actually works, just head over to consultingsuccess.com or click somewhere below where you're listening to this, watching this, and you can get in touch. We'd be happy to chat with you about your current situation and how we can help you to really grow your consulting business to that next level.